Sketching in the winter isn't for the faint of heart. It's dark outside, everything's gray, and I think you gotta be pretty hardcore to want to paint in the winter. It's cold, it's snowy, and at times you wish you were in Hawaii, like I am now, through the magic of video. It doesn't really matter where you are sketching, but some places are more fun than others. Let's get started. I was in Hawaii last summer, and these were the 3 paintings I did. The flower was drawn from a photo I took, and all were done using watercolor pencils and a marker. The palm tree was done without a camera, and the beach painting was a mix of on-site and photo reference. And this is how it happened. I usually sketch and paint in the mountains, so I was really excited to have a chance to sketch on the beach. For the trip, I packed my super colored pencils, and because I was trying to keep things light and compact, I decided to use canvas paper that I cut down to a smaller size so it would fit on this mini clipboard. I could have used a regular sketchbook, but I like how watercolor pencils work on the canvas paper more than on sketchbook paper. That's just a personal preference though. You may decide you like sketchbooks better. No problem there. Drawing a beach scene is pretty straightforward. You kind of just have to pick where to put the horizon line, and if you're lucky, there's some land and palm trees for variety. I'm opting for a slightly higher horizon line, which means slightly less sky, to make room for the ocean and sand. But I'm keeping those clouds behind the palm trees. The blue I used for the sky was light blue. The darker blue I used for the water was a Prussian blue, which is actually a warmer blue. It's interesting to look at the ocean and see that the water looks darker and warmer further out, and lighter and cooler near the beach. I'm trying to get the water smooth and natural looking, and the canvas paper is proving to be a good choice because the pigment from the pencils kind of stays on top and lets me move it around quite a bit. In a sense, I'm breaking up this composition into 5 basic shapes. The sky and the clouds are the first 2 shapes, the ocean is the 3rd big shape, and the island jutting out into the ocean would be the 4th shape. The final 5th shape is the sandy beach that I'm sitting on. I've separated each shape with a different color, with the cool blue sky being the farthest away. The warmer ocean blue appears a bit closer than the sky, and the warmer brown of the sand appears closer than the cool green I used on the protruding island. These warm and cool colors help with what is called atmospheric perspective, and they help the painting have a bit more depth. I think the way the shoreline creates an S-curve also helps lead the eye back into the distance as well. The water brush I'm using here isn't putting out a lot of water, so I have to work at it quite a bit. I probably should have brought a better brush and a cup of water, but I'll work with what I have. You don't need perfect materials to draw and paint. You also don't need to be on a tropical island or in paradise to draw. The perfect conditions rarely exist, but do it anyway. After I had the basic shapes, I added some of the darker marks to represent those dark lava rocks on the shoreline. I also put in some initial lines for the palm trees. I've already complained about my water brush. Not only was it a little too dry, it was also a little too small. I worked at trying to get the sky smooth, but the brush was working against me. It was a little frustrating. And then I remembered that I was on vacation, and it was time to put the painting down and enjoy the surf. And my family. I could finish the painting later. And that turned out to be the next morning, back in the village where we were staying at. While the family was out lounging around, I took advantage of some quiet resting time to finish the painting at the table on the patio. Painting at the table is a bit easier than on your lap at a beach. Fewer things to balance and keep track of. And since I wasn't at the beach anymore, I used a reference photo on my phone. I'm glad I remembered to take a picture, but I'm more glad that I started this painting while I was there. It made it easier to remember what I saw. So for the distant protruding island here, I'm trying to get some variety of color by using both greens and oranges. I think the green and orange makes for a nice textural feel. I like the texture I'm getting here. After I apply a little water, and I'm careful not to use too much water, it's creating a cool mottled effect. I think I took the blending of the green down into the beach a little bit too far here though. But I can fix that later. I'll show you how I did that in a bit. For the sand of the beach, I want to get some texture, so I'm going to use this pink color. This will also help me give some warmth to the sand. And to keep my color harmony, I'm adding a little bit of it in the distance too, but not much. The light gray I'm using will be for shadows, but also to kind of keep things natural looking. Nature actually has a lot of grays in it. The sand has a lot of footprints in it too, so I'm using these colors to try to get the sand to not look so smooth here. To wipe that extra green color I didn't like earlier, I got it extra wet, and then I used a paper towel to lift up the pigment. Since I couldn't lift all of it, I put some white and blue over it too, to kind of get it back to the gray color. But I also used some of the pink again to make it look more like it belongs to the sand further down the beach. That's one of the reasons I like this canvas paper. It's pretty forgiving and allows me to fix my mistakes. Now it's time to work on those clouds a bit. I'm using the warmer blue, which in its washed out form will look like the gray on the bottom of clouds. It's bluish because the blue of the ocean is reflecting back up to the bottoms of the clouds. The tops stay bright though because obviously the bright sun is there. Moving on to the palm trees, I'm starting again with the orange because if you look close they have a lot of orange in them. You'd think that palm tree leaves would just be green, but it's best to look at what you're seeing, not just what you're thinking. The trunks of the palm trees are lighter brown when you see them close, but because they're silhouetted by the brighter clouds, I'm using a darker olive greenish brown here. Once I establish each of the individual palm trees, I'm going back over the orange underpainting of the leaves with a green for the rest of the palm trees. Again, I think the contrasting colors makes for a more realistic effect. I think it's good to be a little impressionistic with the colors. Anyway, I like it. It kind of makes for optical blending, and I think the viewer will fill in the gaps in their own mind of what colors might be missing. Anyway, painting on vacation is really relaxing. I highly recommend it. I can feel this breeze on this patio, and I'm enjoying hearing the sounds of the tropical birds that are here. Maybe you could hear them too. This edge of the sand where the waves come onto the shore and recede is a bit more dark because it stays wet. It has a bluish purplish tone, partially because it's obviously wet, but also because the wet water is reflecting the sky a bit. And since I got the pigment wet here, I was able to push it around a bit and make that shoreline look a little bit more natural looking than just that long, slow curve. I'm using a teal or turquoise color on the lighter areas of this water, and it was really beautiful water. I want to maintain the white of the waves, but there were some beautiful colors in those waves too. So I'm trying to create a feeling of the waves via different colors, and not just the white portions of the waves. But the white part is cool. So I'm using a Posca pen or a white acrylic marker to add in the tops of the waves. Using this marker is easier than trying to erase or lift out the color with the brush. This brush pen works really well, but I don't want to use too much paint, so I'm using a light touch. And I'd rather do multiple layers with it than get too much paint all at one time. I didn't have much paint coming out of the brush at first either, but I figured that out eventually, and it started working a little bit better as I went along. Some of these tools just takes a lot of practice, and this is good practice. The waves are sort of random in how they occur, so I relied quite a bit on my reference photo here to get it to look mostly correct. And I like the lacy feel on the edge of the waves up against the shoreline. I'm really liking using this acrylic pen for different sizes and types of waves. It's kind of fun. It takes a light touch, but it feels like it's working out okay here. I'm kind of surprising myself on how well it's working, to be honest. Knowing that I can't get whiter than white, I need to make areas around the white a little bit darker to make that white stand out more and look brighter. And for the sand, I'm making it even darker with some purple, but I think I may have gotten too saturated, so I may tone it down a little bit later. And I've said this before, but I'm also trying to get this sand to look less smooth and more natural. So I'm going back and forth a bit on that too, while trying a lot of different techniques. I thought about adding some people, or even beach towels and chairs, but I didn't think I could pull it off, so I'm just going to stick with an empty beach here. Having a beach to yourself is nice, and drawing one is the next best thing, I guess. I'm adding some warmer colors, even some olive green, to the most shallow waves, partially to boost the contrast to make the white pop more, but also because I remember that you could see the sand through the water near the shore, and it had a warmer feel than the deeper water out where it was bluer. I complained about the smaller, drier brush earlier, but I think it's working out well for those smaller details. Too much water in the brush is hard to control. You can see that I have the phone nearby with my reference photo on it, so that's helping me with the details as well. I know I said this, but I really like using this Posca pen. I hadn't used it much before this, but I think it works really good on top of watercolor pencils. Also, it counts as water media because acrylic is water-based, unlike an oil paint would be. Going slow on these waves is the way to go. And if I get too much paint, I just wipe it away with my finger, and then I wipe off my finger. It's fun to get lost in painting these waves, and I can't emphasize enough how nice it is to slow down and paint and draw. I'm hoping this video is just as relaxing as painting it was. I also hope that it has given you some ideas on how to paint something on your own. This isn't the best painting of a beach you've ever seen, but that's not really the point. The point was to enjoy sketching and learn a little bit along the way. I know I did. Thanks for exploring art with me. See you in the next video.